Welcome to The Art of Show, where we feature the people who are creating amazing stories for kids. Join us as we chat with children's book illustrators and authors, storyboardists, animators, and more. Now, their art might be for kids, but aren't we all just kids at heart? Here's your host, Brandon.
All right, well, welcome you guys back to The Art of Show. We've got another fun guest lined up for you guys this week. We're interviewing Arree Chung, a great kids book illustrator as well as author. He actually had a second book come out in his series that we're excited to dive into. It's all about ninjas, which are a blast at all times. And so this is a great interview, and we'll get into some more of the details here in a sec. But before we do that, I'm going to give you guys a couple updates just from my end. Thanks to all of you that have supported Vinny, the soccer playing dinosaur that came out about a month ago. And so thank you guys for the support. It's been doing really well on Amazon. And then I'm working on my next book, and I'm actually doing some fun stuff with it, kind of in the planning process. And so if you want to be able to impact what happens actually in the story, you guys can help out. If you guys go to Brandon Cullum, that's CULLUMM like man /space, and you guys can join the team. And you basically get messages from this little boy in space, and you vote on things that you want him to do. So if you've ever seen The Martian or ever done those like text-based adventures, it's kind of like those, just email, and then I'll actually go and illustrate what you decide to do into the story. So I'm hoping to get that one out in December, and it might be actually early into 2017. But it's a lot of fun. So we're going to get into this interview with Arree. Arree is another fun one where he didn't come from a traditional art background. He actually went to school for economics. Then he was in consulting. Then he got a job at Pixar, but still doing kind of consulting stuff. So he wasn't doing the art piece. And then he kind of had the epiphany moment and decided to go to art school, and then has been hustling as a illustrator as well as author. And so he had a really fun book come out a couple years ago called Ninja, which is amazing, super comic book style. It's a lot of fun. And he recently had one come out called Ninja Attack of the Clan, which is a follow-up to that. He does tons of illustration work with other authors. He's got some other books that are coming out, and he's just a blast to talk with. And one of the things that I really liked about this interview is, those folks, so like over the weekend, I was hiking up in the mountains, and you'll be hiking, and then you'll pass someone that's coming back down a trail, especially if you're going up like a mountain, and you'll ask them, hey, how much further is it? How was it? They'll be like, hey, watch out. There's an overturned tree here. You need to go here. You got about 2 more miles to go. But it's always fun to talk to somebody who's kind of been further up the trail than you to let you know what's going to happen. And so Arree is kind of taking that same approach, where he has gone through this whole process of learning how to do kids' books, and he's turning around and teaching it to folks that are coming right after him. And so he has something cool called the Storyteller Academy. I think that's the name. Let me pull it up right. Storyteller Academy. If you guys go to storytelleracademy.com, you can check it out. But he's basically just walking folks through kind of the process of what he has learned. So actually taking a part in it right now. It's a lot of fun. So I encourage you guys to go over and check that out, especially if you're interested at all in making a kid's book. It's going to walk you through the process of what it takes. So he's great, and his personality just comes out through that whole time, through the entire interview, where you can tell he just cares about what he's doing, and he cares about helping other people. And all with that, he's making amazing stories. So Arree's a blast. And without further ado, let's dive into the interview with Arree. Well, good stuff, guys. We want to welcome Arree Chung to The Art of Show. Excited to have him with us. Arree, welcome. You are in California, and you said you're in the Bay Area. Is that right?
That's right, Brandon. Thanks.
Are you originally from the Bay Area?
I am.
So you grew up, and then where were you originally from there?
Well, I was born in Reno, and then my family moved here, and we've been here for a really long time. And I went to college at UC Davis for undergrad, and then later on I went to Art Center for art school.
Yeah, real cool. We've talked to some fun illustrators and authors on the show in the past, and a lot of folks, they kind of start out and they are like, their parents are artists, their grandparents are artists, and they're just kind of born into it. But I thought what was real interesting with your story, you seem a little bit different than that. It didn't seem like you had kind of the typical background. So what was it kind of like in your house growing up? Was kids' books, was that a piece? Was art in there, or kind of what was that childhood like?
My parents are immigrants, and we actually didn't have a lot of children's books in my house. I definitely got a lot of children's books at school.
Okay.
And excuse me, I'm
no
cold. I always loved reading picture books, Dr. Seuss, and especially like Shel Silverstein at school. And but my parents didn't have they were learning English themselves, so we didn't have a lot of picture books at home. And, my parents, they were still learning the language, and, were stressing to have for us to have a good education, and sort of maybe not a typical, I don't have probably a typical picture book, background, but I think I have a very typical like Asian background in terms of, your parents wanting you to become an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. And that definitely was the case in my household, where my parents pushed us to become professionals, and they just wanted better for us.
Yeah. What'd your parents do, or what do they do?
Well, my dad, it was interesting because both my parents were professionals in Asia. So my dad was sort of a businessman and sold books in Asia, and my mom was a nurse.
Okay.
That's how they were able to immigrate here, because my mom had a nursing background. But when they got here, they just worked blue collar jobs. My dad was first a cook in casinos, and then he ended up working a manufacturing job for something like 35, 40 years. And my mom pretty much cleaned houses. She had like so many jobs just to try to make ends meet. She cleaned houses. She worked at retirement homes. She worked at the kitchen of like schools. I mean, I remember a time she had, I kid you not, like 5 or 6 jobs.
Oh, wow.
And she would take the bus between them. And yeah, my brother and I would take the bus with her and help her out. And, we definitely like appreciated my parents' hard work.
Yeah. Now, were you born in the States?
So I was born in Reno.
Oh, in Reno. Gotcha. How long was it? How long had they been in these States before you were born?
Before I was like a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Gotcha.
Not long at all. I mean, it was probably it was a super stressful time, especially for my dad, because my mom actually, like, what sort of happened was my mom, when she came to the United States, there was just a lot of stress that goes into immigrating, move, and she didn't get a lot of sleep, and she actually had a bout of schizophrenia.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty traumatic, and my dad, had to take care of myself, and my brother actually immigrated over. He was in Thailand. He was like a small kid. And so there was a time where my dad was just taking care of the 3 of us and worried about my mom. And, I think it really set this trajectory of like, for my dad, of just, kind of being on edge and a little bit afraid of taking care of the family in the United States, And I think that was like a big influence on his stressing that we, do really well in school and get conservative, good jobs, which is totally something I didn't do in the end, because I ended up going for my passion instead.
Yeah. So you said you went to, did you say UC Davis? Is that, and what was your undergrad in?
At first I enlisted as biochemistry, and I thought I was going to be a doctor, but I realized pretty quickly, especially taking chemistry classes and just not enjoying the curriculum at all, that I didn't want to do that. And so I actually got an economics degree.
Okay.
And I worked in consulting for a little while before I decided I wanted to do something fun.
Yeah. What was that like? So you're doing consulting, you probably had a nice job going. What was it that kind of made you decide this isn't for me?
I'll tell you what it was, Brandon, is I think consulting on the outside seems kind of maybe glamorous, because they tell you, oh, you get to travel and work on these projects, all this stuff. But excuse me. But when you actually get to doing the work, which is basically building spreadsheets, digging through documents, and it just wasn't fun. I mean, you were working for these big clients like PG&E and you just felt like you're a small little
Mm.
cog in this huge machine, and you're making documents that just don't matter, and you're working so many hours, 16 hours, and you're always away from home. You see pretty much the hotel and the airport, and that's it. It, I just knew it didn't feel fulfilling to me.
Mm.
It didn't feel, I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And I was planning on going to business school, and then I met some other coworkers that just graduated from this business school, and they were doing the same job I was doing, but they just got paid like $100,000.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I just, I could see myself if
Mm.
I went to business school and then I get another professional job, I would be doing the same thing that they're doing, but I would be 10 years older, and I would be away from my family. And
Mm.
I just knew it wasn't for me. So, um, that's when I started just kind of soul searching and
Mm.
thinking, what is it that I really want to do?
So what brought you to art? Was there something specific, like an illustration or a certain style that brought you that, or what was that?
Yes. So actually it was a chance encounter with, they're dear friends now, but it was a chance encounter with some art students on a train ride home. So in the Bay Area, we have a train system called BART,
Uh-huh.
Bay Area Rapid Transit, and I was leaving my consulting job after a long day. It was like 9 p.m. And I met some art students on the BART train, and I asked them, "Hey, are you guys artists?" Because they were carrying these big, large art bags, and they showed me their drawings, and I was just blown away. And I just thought, oh, these guys, it's so cool they get to draw, and they're so good. All of
Yeah.
them are so good. And so they invited me to actually go to a workshop. And one day, like the following week, I decided I'm going to take those guys up on that offer, because I wrote down the address of the workshop, and I showed up at this workshop in my business suit. And all these students were looking at me like, who's the guy in the suit?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what started. I just like fell in love with drawing
Mm.
again. And I drew a lot in high school, but I
Okay.
never took it seriously.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trained, so I didn't know how to draw at all from a model or anything like that. But I was just so curious about it, and I wanted to get better. And the guys from the BART train were there, and they were so nice, and they started teaching me how to draw and how to like look at things. And I was just hooked after that. And I just knew I needed to quit my job and eventually make my way to art school.
And you, when did you start art school?
I started Art Center. Well,
Art Center.
I started Academy of Art in like, I think 2000. It's gonna make me sound old, but I think it was like 2003.
Okay. So how long was it between that bus ride and the moment that you started, kind of going after it?
Yeah. So let's see. I think I graduated UC Davis at 1999, and
Okay.
then I think I started going going to Academy of Art in that 2002 or 2003 is when
Okay.
I met those guys. And then I went to Art Center in 2006.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh, no. Let me back that up. Oh, I went to the Academy of Art in 2001, and then I went to Art Center in 2003.
Okay.
That's right. And then I graduated 4 years later. Yeah. That's
Gotcha.
it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what was it like from that kind of 99 to 2001 period? Because I got to imagine like you're working, you're probably making pretty
Yeah.
good money versus like now you're going to go after this art career. What was that conversation like?
Oh, it was thrilling in one side, because I was finally doing something for me.
Mhm.
And I was just so in love with getting better at art. I was just so addicted. To, that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn how to become an artist. And, because at that time I was spending all my money and paying money to learn art. And I just wanted to get to this point where I could get paid to do art.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Let me
know?
flip this. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was kind of scary at the time, because the life plan for you had changed, where I wasn't going to go to business school anymore. And my dad and I disagreed on that, and he told me that I was making a
Mm.
bad choice. And I knew financially that he was right, but I just didn't care anymore. I just wanted to do things for me.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow that inner voice. And that's something that I, really tell people about now is, I mean, you have to be practical about how you do it. But I think, when you follow your passions, and I know it sounds cliche to follow your passions, but when you follow your passions and you stay with it consistently, it does take you to places that you never think you'd be at.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
what was going to school for art like versus going to school for economics?
Well, it was at Art Center. Art Center is a really intense school.
Okay.
So, a couple of things is I think when I went to when I went to school for art at Art Center, I was older. It was also a private school.
Okay.
I was primarily paying most of it out of pocket and taking loans. So I took it super seriously. Not that I took that.
Right.
Not that I didn't take undergraduate super seriously, but when I went to undergrad, I was 18, and it was like it's kind of a party, where you meet a bunch of people at the dorms, and it's super fun. But at Art Center, it was all about learning, getting better. It was really fun because we were all at this amazing institution, and we knew the alumni that came out of there, and we were just chomping at the bit to improve our skills, improve ourselves, and learn as much as we could. And it was a roller coaster at the same time because the only way you get better at doing art is by doing lots of art and struggling and doing lots of bad pieces. But I think it really taught me about the creative process of revising and trying many times over and having a consistent way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So once you graduated, I guess from art college, you said in 2003, mm-hmm. you wound up at Pixar. Is that right? Is that am I timeline? Is that right? Or is there a different spot?
So the different spot is going back in the sort of timeline of things. I was working in consulting, and I met those guys on BART, and they sort of changed my life. I was like, oh, I need to do art. I need to get better at art. I need to make my way to art school. So at my consulting job, I started Googling like where the best art schools are, and back then, and I still think now that it's hard to find like a ranking of best colleges, art schools in the States. So I started going through companies that I like, seeing to see where they recruit from.
Yeah.
And Pixar's here in the Bay Area, and I absolutely love Toy Story.
Yeah.
Their movies. And so I went to their website, and I found a job opportunity that fit me really well. And I think this is where I feel like I've just been really blessed. I think God's really taken care of me in many ways in my journey. But I found this job opportunity. I applied to the job, and 2 weeks later, I was hired. Yeah. I found myself at Pixar 2 weeks, like literally 2 weeks after that day.
That's
it was
nuts.
It was a serendipitous thing, and Pixar ended up being. I worked there at Pixar for 3 years.
Okay.
So yeah, I think so from 2000 to 2003.
Gotcha.
Something like that. Yeah, around there is when I worked at Pixar, and I made spreadsheets and reports, and was part of the production team. I worked on Monsters Inc. and The Incredibles. And I wasn't doing art for a job, but I was around storytelling.
Yeah.
I was around. I feel so lucky being there. I just got to see it firsthand, and for me, I knew then it's like I wanted to be a storyteller.
Yeah.
I was in love with art already, but being at Pixar, I saw the power of stories and storytelling, and it was an awesome time.
That's awesome. Yeah, you don't hear too often. I was just looking on Pixar's website, and I got a job 2 weeks later. So especially because it was, I guess, non-art related. So you're using the stuff you're already doing could transfer over, which is really cool.
Right. Yeah, I think I was just really lucky.
Yeah.
Pixar at the time, they were pretty big. They were pretty popular, but they're not as big. And they're like 4 times bigger now. Yeah, so I think it was maybe a little bit easier still then. Yeah. But I think it was just luck.
That's awesome. Yeah. So once you graduated, did you immediately go into doing picture books, or what's kind of the journey to picture books from there?
Yeah. So when I graduated, I was really fortunate to land a job with Disney Imagineering. And so I helped work on video game concepts and educational game concepts. And that was a really great experience because I got to design a product and help with ideas and paint pictures and get paid for doing art for the first time. So that was pretty cool. And And then the economy kind of went south in 2008. So I was laid off, and I went up to Seattle and got a job there and worked at a video game company. And then from there, our game didn't do so well, so I got laid off again, and I returned to the Bay Area because I missed my family and my friends that I've grown up with my whole life. And there was also a great startup scene here with mobile games and whatnot. And so I started getting into mobile games here. I worked at a company called CrowdStar, and we made a girly game which made tons of money, but I really didn't like working on that game.
Yeah.
And that sort of was the motivation for me to really spend time on my own craft on making stories. And I bring that up because I think a lot of us that want to make picture books. It's hard to find the extra time. Life is just really, really busy, but you have to have that motivation to find time to work on top of work, because otherwise, you don't get better without putting in the work and having some having some guidance and mentorship.
Yeah. So you're working for a different game company. Sounds like in the Valley. Jesse, you were let go from that job? Did I see that right?
No, actually, with CrowdStar, I was working on this girly game, and we were making clothing assets and selling them, and that's how the game monetizes. And I just was so tired of it, and
so designing digital like girls' clothes.
Yeah,
I can't imagine why you didn't have a blast doing that all the time.
Oh, I was actually managing a team of 14 people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, like I was the sort of the art director or lead artist, and I managed the team. But we had a huge set of clothing items due every single week, and if we didn't get it done, then the company wouldn't make money, and then everyone would be in really bad shape. But I just got really. Actually, CrowdStar treated me really well. They treat their employees really well overall, but I just didn't want to do that kind of work anymore. And so I had a few opportunities to go to a few new startups, and then I went to a startup where they were making this fantasy game, and I started working there, and things just didn't go well there. Like, it was just a chaotic place. The creative director was sort of just unhappy bipolar person. I don't want to slam anybody publicly, but that's really, it was just a very toxic situation, and it was unorganized. And at a startup, in the Silicon Valley, you can get a few $1 million in funding pretty easily, but it's a lot of pressure, because it means basically in a year or 2 years you have to be profitable, or else you're out of money, and then everyone's out of a job. And that was sort of the pressure cooker that we were in, and the game was behind, and it was not going well. And I was an art director there, and I was the first person to get blamed, and I got fired.
Gotcha.
So, and I was, honestly, that was a blessing, because I was just sick of it at that point. I had money saved up. I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I decided I was going to really work on picture books.
So where did picture books, just the idea of doing picture books, and I think you had mentioned Ninja had kind of been in the back of your mind this whole time, but where was that seed kind of planted? Was that back in school?
So the first time I knew I wanted to do picture books was at Art Center. I took a class with Stephen Turk. It was about picture books, and I just love, being able to tell a story, and I love being able to design the whole thing. So that was the first time it was like in my head that this is what I want to do. But in Seattle, when I was in Seattle, I learned about SCBWI, and I started getting involved. And that was the first time that I think I got some professional help, and started learning about the business, and it started becoming more of a reality. But I had a lot to grow from. I had a lot to learn. I didn't know how to tell a story. I didn't know how to I didn't know how to construct a story. I didn't know how to do many things. And then I was working on it on and off. I'd have moments. I'd had months where I'd work on it a ton, but I would burn out. I would feel frustrated that my stories still weren't that great. And along the way, there were very specific people that helped me become a better storyteller. So in Seattle, when I moved from Seattle, I moved back to the Bay Area, and there was an editor that gave me some really great advice. And then I started working on my stories even more. And then when I was so unhappy at CrowdStar, I used to, instead of going home, I would go to the coffee shop and work on my stories almost every day because I was so unhappy. I mean, I knew I needed a way out, and I knew I didn't want to work in games anymore where, as an artist in games, you're just producing artwork for the games. You're just making assets all day long. And I just I didn't find that fun or fulfilling. It wasn't the reason why I became an artist, And so, and especially after I got fired from the new startup game company, I had it. So there was that period of 3-4 years where I was just, incrementally getting better, and my motivation was really high at that point. And that's basically how I got to a point where I just was working on my picture books all the time, and I went to SCBWI, and everything sort of happened.
That's awesome.
From there. Yeah.
So, in Ninja, the style, it almost feels kind of like the panels, especially like the comic book style. Like, did that come from your childhood, or because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is not that it's not typical, but it's like, oh, this is really cool, like the real fast paced and the motion and everything. Where'd that kind of come from?
I think it just comes from my love of comics and film, and I definitely saw. I took some influences from like Japanese comics, and I'm just a big fan of design, and I knew I wanted this Japanese like modern house feel. This, so. But I think I think it's probably just from my love of comics, and it was just the best advice on how to tell the story.
Yeah.
Because there was just a lot of stuff happening in that story, and I wanted to, illustrate all the little moments.
Yeah. Where did the story come from? Was it like a picture you're working out, or was it an idea, or was it kind of both?
Actually, so I was working on, I was telling you about working on my own stories for many years during that period of time, and I actually was working on a lot of stories that weren't going anywhere. And Ninja came about from signing up for an SCBWI intensive.
Okay.
And I made it for an actual assignment. And when it was time to do the assignment, I actually didn't really have anything. And I went through my old sketchbooks, and I found this little doodle that said, "Brian isn't a kid, he's a ninja." And it was so simple that and one of my problems at that point was I was making such complicated stories that they weren't very good. They were just too complicated. But I saw that, and I was like, oh, I think this is really simple. And I started imagining about this kid who is so like his world as a ninja is real. And that's kind of the genesis of it. And I actually I was working on a few other on a few other creative projects of my own at the time, and so Ninja was something that was I was thinking about in the background for a couple of weeks, and then I just the deadline was upon me in just a couple of days, and I basically sat down and I spent all night, and I just wrote it mostly in one night, and that had never happened to me before. And I had an epiphany. I went through 14 drafts in one night, and it was a breakthrough. And I think all the work that I had been doing up to that point, reading lots of picture books every single week and doing master copies and stuff like that, I think it really helped me learn some of the basics, and I was able to apply those basics to this draft of Ninja. And it ended up being my big break.
Now, was that your first, it's published, whether it was just illustrations? Okay. So author and illustrator. What was it like? What was it like actually seeing the book out there, in the wild?
It was amazing because it's sort of like, in some ways it's the beginning of your picture book career, and in another way it's sort of the end of not, I wouldn't say the end of struggling, because you're still working and still figuring out how to make a career out of making picture books, but it was finally a validation that I
Mm.
finally found something I can do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Something that I love, like, this idea of wanting to become an artist and wanting to do something that you love for a living and pursuing that, it was sort of the beginning of that.
Mm.
And that's been a super long journey since, I guess, 2003 till the time I got published, which was 2014. So it was an 11-year journey
Jeez, yeah.
to get to this point where, holding this book in the bookstore where you're like, I made this and this is out in the world and people like it and I can make another one and, hopefully I can just keep it going. That was really an amazing feeling. And beyond that is just actually seeing kids read it and seeing kids' reactions to it. And, when they're hiding underneath tables and sending me pictures of their ninja costumes. And yeah, it's pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What were your parents reactions like I guess at that first time, like you actually handed them like a physical book?
Yeah. So unfortunately my dad passed away a few years before I got published. So he never got to see that, but my mom's really sweet. She's always been supportive. She's always been actually the one that just says, whatever you do, I'll support you.
That's cool.
And she was just really proud,
That's awesome.
And now she, gives books to all her friends and tells everyone, and but yeah, it's I couldn't have done this without my family. When I decided to get out of games and I decided to do picture books. I actually moved out of my apartment. I used to live in San Francisco, and the rent there is insanely expensive. And I moved back home. This is actually the house I grew up in.
Oh, that's awesome. So in Reno?
No, in Union City.
Union City,
in the Bay Area.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I live at home, and I just save tons of money, and I'm able to have my own freedom with doing my own books and doing the things I'm curious about. So, there are sacrifices that you just have to make practically to make things happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So that came out in 2013, is that right?
2014.
2014
Yeah.
Ninja. So when did the sequel, or is it a sequel? Do you call it a sequel? But Attack of the Clan?
Yeah. So it's going to be a series.
Okay.
There's actually a third one coming out next Christmas,
Oh, awesome.
which is called Ninja Claws.
Yes.
But the second one just came out this year, and it's super fun. It's about Maxwell, who he's reading comics and he wants someone to play with and wants someone to like live out some of these battle scenes with, and everyone's too busy to play with him, which I think happens to kids all the time, where they want to play and everyone's just busy doing stuff, right? So that came out this year, and then Ninja Attack of the Clan comes out next year.
That's awesome.
Ninja Claws comes out next year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's it like creating books in like an established world versus like kind of starting it from ground zero?
What's really neat about it is there's different challenges. So I think excuse me. I think the challenge with the first book is that you need to build the character, in the first few pages, or you have to establish them. And in picture books, they're so efficient, you need to establish them right away. So, with the first book, it was about like Maxwell putting on his costume and transforming into this ninja, and then establishing what, Ninja Kid would do, disarming the dog and scaring the dad and stuff like that. Versus in the second book, since you already have the character built, you can just jump right into the story. So, you need to still like have a beginning point of the story. So in this case, Maxwell's reading comics and he's getting all these ideas on, battling, and then he has to go and ask his family if they want to play, and that's the beginning of the story. But you don't need to, I don't need to reestablish Maxwell again. But I have actually heard some people, read the second book and not know of the first book. So I don't know. Maybe I needed to give more of a nod to the first book. I don't know. But I think that overall is that you don't need to reestablish a character. Gotcha. Yeah.
And so you've illustrated other people's books as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
What is that like when it's not your own story?
Well, it's really different. it has its own challenges and it's really fun. I think probably the best part about it is you don't need to come up the core concept of an idea is already given to you. It's already done. So I actually illustrated this book called The Fix-It Man.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I was just looking at that one. So.
Yeah, and it comes out actually I think next week.
Okay.
But when you get a manuscript and you just have all these ideas hit you, oh, I could do this with a book. I could do this with a book. It's really neat to take somebody else's world that they've kind of thought about already and be able to bring it to life.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest benefit of illustrating somebody else's story is that they've already have put together a full story and a full concept for you that you get to just like play. You get to build it.
Yeah.
Versus if you're writing your own book and you're starting from scratch, then you have to you have to invent so many things, and you have to think about how you're constructing the story, and then you're able to build it. So it's just a different set of challenges, but it's fun.
Yeah, that's cool. So I'm seeing that Fix It Man is going live. Looks like on the 8th of November, which this should be when this actually podcast goes live. This will actually go live, I think, the day after. But give folks kind of a plug. What's that one about, and what was it like working on it?
So it's called Joshua. It's The Fix It Man, and the line is Joshua James, the Fix It Man. If you can't fix it, no one can.
Yes.
And Nancy Antonelli and Susan Hood and I sort of talked about our love of gadgets, and we naturally thought of Rube Goldberg.
Yeah.
So this has sort of a whole Rube Goldberg.
That's so cool.
So he gets out of bed in a Rube Goldberg way.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So this book was, this book is super fun. There's lots of details. It was also really, a challenge to come up and invent all this stuff. So for me, it was like an artistic. I knew this book was going to be really hard to make because we talked about, let's make it a Rube Goldberg, like story, and how do you incorporate that into a narrative? And I knew I was going to grow a lot, just be really super challenged. And but we made it, we did it, and I'm really proud of the book. It has so many fun details. It has really great rhyming text, and it's fun. I think kids are really going to like it. Like they're probably going to go through all the details and see how things link up. Yeah. So hopefully it really inspires kids to, make contraptions and play with things. Yeah, I think they're going to really like it.
I did engineering in college, and so when I was a kid, if I ever saw stuff like that, I was always trying to figure out, like, I want to make the craziest thing. So I would have read that book and been like, all right, I'm going to try to make this. So that's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. Awesome.
So you mentioned, as we're kind of wrapping up, you mentioned that it was hard on that one to kind of come up with a story. And you also mentioned kind of through the years learning kind of what the story is. And before we got on the call, you were talking about the Storyteller Academy. And so when people think of picture books, they may just be thinking they're pictures, but they forget if it's not a good story, it's no fun. So how did that come about, and what are you guys doing with that?
Yeah, so Storyteller Academy is just something I literally just started a few months ago. But I had this idea a few years ago is to, to sort of make my dream of becoming a picture book artist and to becoming a storyteller. I had to learn so many things along the way. And I thought about I had wished that there was a course that was so in depth and hands on that would help me just accelerate my learning. If I was going to say that if there were three things, that helped me become a published author, I'd say the first thing is sort of professional feedback and advice. I'd say the second thing is critique groups and workshopping your story. And then the third thing I would say is like specific education to picture books. And it's such a nuanced thing. And so, where I'm at now, I've actually learned so much about creativity and picture book making and storytelling and how to construct a story that I felt like I needed to share these things. I wanted to help other people that have the same dream that I do. And I also knew if I built a class that I would also become a better storyteller just by teaching it and also learning from other people as we're going through stories. And you get to work on stories all day. So yeah, I built this class on. It's called Storyteller Academy, and for anyone who's interested in becoming a storyteller, and interested in working on specifically picture books, they can go to storytelleracademy.com, and we're going to run the class probably 3 times a year. And,
Okay.
And yeah, it's been really, really fun. I'm in the middle of the class right now, and so many people are giving me great feedback, and we're making stories, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
And it feels really great on the other hand, on the other side, to like help people improve their stories. And
yeah. So
give them encouragement.
Is it live then, or not live, but is it like critiqued? So it's not just like you sign up and so there's interaction.
Yeah. So there's 2 levels of membership. The first membership level is a critique group.
Okay.
And we critique your workshop. We workshop your story every week for. Okay. Right now it's 6 weeks, but I think it's going to need to be longer because 6 weeks is just not enough time. So there's weekly coursework that goes out in videos that you log in, and you get to watch that in your own time. And then every Thursday we hop on a call, and we workshop your idea, and we make it into a dummy. We just keep on working at it till it's good. Yeah. So that's really extremely limited in terms of how many slots, because just for time's sake, can't take on everyone. So then there's a second option, which is an online only class, and there's no organized critique group for you, but you get everything else in the class, and you get to watch on your own, and it's also a cheaper option. So gotcha. So in any kind of way, hopefully you'll be able to participate, and I'm sure there's a wait list for the critique groups because they're just a limited slot. But if you're part of the online only, then you can get on the wait list first for the critique groups.
Gotcha. That's really cool. Yeah. Well, as we're wrapping up, a couple questions we like to kind of like ask everybody that we have
Sure.
on. The first is, do you have any kids? Do you have any children?
I don't.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. So we want to ask it this way. So when you were growing up, was there a book that like you just absolutely loved, like your just favorite kind of all time?
Oh man, there's so many. Of course, Where the Wild Things Are with Maurice Sednick. I think that just blew my mind with the art and the story, and taking my imagination to another place. Again, I loved a lot of Shel Silverstein poems, and so yeah, I'd say those.
Where the Wild Things Are?
Yeah, Where the Wild Things Are.
And then are there or who are the folks that you kind of look up to now that are creating books that are putting out there?
Yeah, so there's a lot too, but a few that I think I hold dear since they went to Art Center, and I think I kind of looked up to them in their journey and their path. I'd say Peter Brown is definitely somebody who I think does incredible work, and it's really been neat to see him make a middle grade novel and take on writing as the main art form. Dan Santat's been amazing, and he's done so many great things, and he's just a great example of somebody who works hard and is also very he puts some stuff out there. I really appreciate him, his blogs, and I think it's encouraging for me, and I think for many other people. David Shannon is someone I've always looked up to, and I love his stories, and I actually got to meet him while I was at Art Center. So those are just a few people that went to Art Center that I also look up to, but there's so many so many more people that I've met through SCBWI, like Ashley Bryan, and
That's awesome. Well, good stuff. Yeah. Well, if folks want to keep up with you and the books you have coming out, just came out or coming out in the future, what's the best way for folks to do that?
So just go visit arree.com, ARREE.com, and I'm also on Twitter and Facebook.
Well, good stuff. We'll link it.
Arree Chung. Yeah.
We'll link everything up in the show notes. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's fun to hear stories like yours that are not the typical, I guess, story, but it just like the conflict and everything around actually what it takes to put a book together. So you've had an amazing story, and it's fun to see now you're teaching people how to create stories because of it.
Yeah, I want to help them in their journey because I know it's not easy.
Yeah.